Well, hey, friends, welcome back to another episode of the podcast. My name is Lisa Mustard, and I am a licensed marriage and family therapist in the great state of South Carolina. And this is going to be one of those episodes that is not highly edited or highly produced. And I'm going to be answering some listener questions on this episode. And I have the questions in front of me, but I don't really have anything scripted out. So I'm just going to be answering the questions as I go through them. If you have questions for me, feel free to send me an email, lisa@lisamustard.com, or you can fill out the contact form on my website. Just head over to lisamustard.com and click contact on the bottom of the page. You'll see it. All right, let's just dive into these questions. And I'm laughing because I've barely looked at these questions. I just wanted to read them to you, come on the show, answer them, and just kind of see where this goes. First question, can you share a personal story or experience that led you to focus on mental health and emotional wellness in your career? Wow, this is a great question and something that I could probably do a whole episode on, but I will try to keep it short and sweet and give you the highlights. So my undergraduate degree is in communications, public relations. And before I went back to school, to grad school, I worked in sports marketing. I worked for a cycling race called the Tour DuPont back in 96. I was an intern. And then after that, I moved from Richmond, Virginia, which is where I grew up, to Atlanta to work for the Goodwill Games. From the Goodwill Games, I then went to work for World Championship Wrestling. And I worked in marketing for just a little bit. And that's where I realized, like, what am I doing with my life? How did I get here? What is the future for me and my career? And I was in my mid-20s at that point. I decided to go back to school for health education and promotion. Got my master's in public health at the University of South Carolina. I moved here to go to USC, Carolina, as we call it here in Carolina, not North Carolina, but just Carolina. And I've lived here ever since. I came here in 99 and been here, 25 years. And after I moved here, I soon met my future husband, but we were just friends for a long time before we started dating. Once we started dating, some of my old habits of relationships kicked in, which would be clinginess, neediness, hard time trusting, hard time believing what he told me was real, always like second guessing the relationship. I was starting to fall into old patterns and habits from previous relationships. And I went to counseling for the first time in my entire life, learned a lot about myself, and fell in love with the process of therapy. So that's when I decided to go back and get my master's degree in counseling. So I have two masters, one in health promotion and education, and the other one is in counselor education. And I am a marriage and family therapist by license. So in my program, you could either become an LPC, a licensed professional counselor, or a marriage and family therapist. I chose LMFT because I've always been fascinated by families and relationships. Come to find out, the reason why I had issues with that relationship was because of things that I experienced growing up and how I made meaning out of them and how I projected them onto my relationships in my life. So I learned a lot about myself. And that is my start in this field. So that is my personal story that led me to focus on mental health and become a therapist. Okay, the next question I got is, what inspired you to start the therapy show, and how has your podcast journey influenced your professional practice? I like this question a lot. This is a really cool question. I decided to start the therapy show. Some of y'all may know this. A few years ago, I think it was in like 2018, I was at a really big conference and we were sitting in the chairs all day, and I was in Charleston, South Carolina, and I kept thinking, man, it'd be awesome if I could take these presenters and speakers and put them in my earbuds and walk around Charleston, go, for a nice long walk, and yet still get the information and education. And that's when I got really curious about the idea of starting continuing education through audio. And podcasting, I listened to podcasts. I love podcasts. And it was just a marriage of two things that I was excited about and passionate about. So that's how I started the show, was really to become a continuing education provider. And I still offer continuing education courses on my website. I am a NBCC approved provider. And that means that LPCs, LMFTs, possibly social workers, depending on your state, the CEs that I offer on my website should be, okay for your license renewal when it's time. So I have 1-hour courses. You can check them out on my site. Just click on the pod courses tab. And then I also host other continuing education courses, like video courses for other, people who do some cool stuff. Like there's holistic counseling on there. There's attachment styles on there. There's breath work on there. So I'm the administrator for their courses. And if you have a course and you think that you want to get into continuing education, feel free to reach out to me. We can talk, see if you're a fit for my podcast and my what I do as an admin. Just feel free to contact me through my website. The next part of that question I really like is, how has your podcast journey influenced your practice, my professional practice? About the time that I started the podcast, I was hitting burnout really, really hard, almost to the point where I wanted to leave the field. Like I was thinking about doing anything but therapy. And my mom realized that I was kind of going through this burnout, and I was visiting her in Northern Virginia one time, and that's right when Lori Gottlieb's book, Maybe You Should Talk to Someone, came out. And she saw me picking it up in the store, and my mom, being so funny and clever, she goes, maybe you should read that book. And I did. And that book, along with deciding to challenge myself with something new, like starting a podcast, has really re-energized my work, my love for this field, my love for helping people. So that is how it has influenced my professional practice. And as I've evolved as a woman, as a mom, as a wife, and as a therapist, I'm now looking for my next challenge, and that would be getting certified as a hypnotherapist. So I'm working on my certification for that. My goal is to have that done hopefully early summer, because I want to be able to offer that as a service, as a consultant as well as a hypnotist. So I'm looking to start that this summer. I love hypnotherapy. I didn't know I loved it at all until I looked into rapid transformational therapy. I didn't really know much about it. I've had Tracy Canella on the show. She is a hypnotherapist. I've had Dr. Liz Bonet on the show. She's also a hypnotist or hypnotherapist. And when I had them on the show, I was curious about it, but not ready to maybe take a deeper dive into it. And somehow I came across Rapid Transformational Therapy by Marissa Peer, and I was just so curious and intrigued that I went ahead and signed up for her course. If you guys are interested in becoming a hypnotherapist or hypnotist, I will put a link in the show notes where you can learn more. Would love for you to check it out. Okay, so thanks for that question. It was really great. The next question is, from your experience, what is one therapeutic technique that you find underrated yet highly effective? I would say hypnosis or hypnotherapy, just from what I'm learning about it, how you tap into the subconscious mind, how you're able to go back to meaningful events that have shaped your worldview and really take some time to process those, and how just by reframing a lot of your thoughts and beliefs, you can, and through hypnosis, you can really live a better and healthier life. So I'm really fascinated by that right now. And I do think that it's underrated yet highly effective. And when I tell people that I'm learning it, the first thing they want is, hey, can you hypnotize me? Can you do it now? Or can we do it now? So I find it really cool that people are interested in hypnosis and they see value in it. So that would be one therapeutic technique. I also think that there's a lot that to be learned about psychedelics. I think for the right people, psychedelics can be a very effective treatment. But off the top of my head, those are the two that come up. The next question is, what is your favorite episode you've recorded? Golly, this is hard to pick. I have so many, but I will say probably my favorite episode is actually an episode I did along with my husband as the co-host. We interviewed Richard Lang, who is known for a process called the Headless Way. I'll share the link in the show notes if you guys want to listen to that. The Headless Way is fascinating as well. It's all a philosophy on, how you live your life and how you view your life. I know I'm saying a lot. I have a hard time putting the Headless Way into words. So I will put a link in the show notes and you can check out the video. But that's probably my favorite episode because I got to do it with my husband. And I really want to have him back on the show to be a co-host with me. So maybe he'll show up again as a co-host in the near future. That would be really fun. We have to come up with a topic, though, that would make sense for both of us to be a part of. He is really into consciousness and meditation, as well as megalithic. Do you even know what that is? Megalithic architecture. So I got to find something that both of us can talk about on the show together. Okay, so what other questions have I received? Let me see. What are some practical steps individuals can take to foster personal growth outside of therapy sessions? Well, this is a tough one to answer because I don't know necessarily what you are working on in therapy. So just take this as with a grain of salt. And of course, if you're in therapy, talk to your therapist about these ideas. Don't just, listen to me because this is for informational and entertainment purposes only. But things that you can do, it depends on what you're working on. I always think that self-reflection is really good. Journaling is really good. Self-care is really good. I think it's important to get out in nature, to go for a walk. I also think it's great to get off your phone, off of social media, read a book, some things that, will help foster personal growth outside of this therapy room. That it just comes down to what it is you're working on. Work to grow your relationships, your connections. But if you're having a hard time with those things, then definitely talk to your therapist about what you can do outside of therapy sessions to, foster anything that you're working on. Okay, so let's see. I'm going to do one or two more. In your view, what are the key components of building emotional resilience in today's fast-paced world? Well, I think how I would answer that is first of all, if today's world is fast-paced, why can't we slow it down for ourselves? Why does it have to be fast-paced? Just because society tells us we live in a fast-paced world, does that really mean that we have to agree to do that? So I would say slow it down, slow it down, slow it down. What do you really need in your life? What things are missing? What obstacles are you facing? Where do you want to grow? Ask yourself those questions, and then I think you can really start to work on emotional resilience. Emotional resilience comes from going through hard things. If we don't go through hard things, how do we build that resilience muscle? So if you are going through something that's hard, know that you are going to get through it on the other side. Have you heard that saying, the obstacle is the way? If there's anything I've learned at 50 years old is life is not easy, life is not fair, and we have to go through some stuff. But that is where the growth lies. In my mid-20s, if I hadn't gone to therapy and worked on myself and learned how to be healthier in relationships, I wouldn't have the marriage that I have today. I wouldn't have, the relationship I have with my children today. And I knew that I didn't want those things. I didn't want to show up in my marriage needy and attention seeking and second guessing and manipulative. I didn't want to show up in my relationships like that anymore. And so going through that and working on myself built my emotional resilience because I learned new ways of thinking and being. I hope that makes sense. I really hope that makes sense. Maybe I'm a little too abstract. I don't know. Y'all let me know. All right. I think, let's see. This question here is kind of similar to one that we've already talked about. What daily or weekly practices do you recommend for someone looking to level up their emotional health? Just self-awareness is everything. What do you need? What do you need to live the healthiest life that you want to lead? Does that mean you have to create new habits? Does that mean that you have to let go of some relationships? Because it's up to us to work on our emotional health. We can't have other people do it for us. So I would just say, what do you really need? Or what are you seeking? And get really clear on what you want for your emotional health. Once again, I feel like I'm kind of abstract here, but these are just really big questions, and it depends on your situation. It depends on what you're going through. But at the end of it all, only you can change your life. I'm just going to say that on the end of that question. How do you balance your professional responsibilities with your own personal healing and development? That's a really good one. I joke around and say I don't really think there's balance. We're always trying to multitask or find balance. I really think that we have intentions and priorities. So I'm very clear on what my priorities are, and I work to be in alignment with them. So with my professional responsibilities, I want to do a really good job at my job. So I get paid, they pay me to do my job. So I have to make sure that I'm showing up for them and the best that I can, and as a therapist, I have to take care of myself. I have to set really good boundaries so I can show up as the best therapist that I can be for my job. And you guys know I work mainly with a military population. So there's, depending on the season, there can be more or less clients that I'm working with. It really just kind of depends on, I call the tempo of what's going on within the military branch. And so that means sometimes I have to work weekends, and I just plan for that. I just know that this is the season where I might have to work a couple of weekends, and I work with my husband to make sure that, we have a schedule and everything is, set up as best as can be. But how does that play into my personal healing and development? I mean, it just comes down to intentions, priorities, and boundaries. So if I'm working on my certification in hypnotherapy, I might realize like I'm going to have to put this off for a couple days and come back to it because work is kind of busy. And it's like I'm in a season, and I know that this season will shift in a couple weeks, and it's all going to, shift again. So I hope that makes sense. I know I'm saying that a lot in this episode. I hope that makes sense, but I guess I don't have a really, really clear answer for that. I would say I'm really good at being flexible. I'm really good about shifting my schedule to accommodate what is necessary and needed at my job, because that's just the nature of working with the military, I guess. Okay, I think I've covered all the questions, and let me see. Let me see if there's anything else I want to share with you guys. I have some more questions here, but I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to save them for another day, and I'm going to leave this episode with, ending on these questions. If you have questions you want me to answer, feel free. Like I said, lisa@lisamustard.com. Head to my website, lisamustard.com, and then click on the contact form. I want to remind you about my pod courses. If you're needing continuing education contact hours, you can get half off your first one. I also have a bundle package going on right now, so just head over to my website. If you are looking for information on self-care, I also have a eBook that is called 15 Easy Habits That Support Your Mental Health, so you can get that free download. I also have a private podcast for therapists who are looking to create more income. And also on that private podcast is where you can hear my Let's podcast meetups. We have those. They're free once a month. You can just join me on a Zoom, and I answer any and all questions that you have about podcasting. And if you can't make it, I record them and then publish them on that private podcast feed. So I'll put the link in the show notes if you want to sign up for that. I would love to see you over there. And I appreciate you guys being here. This is really fun answering these questions. I love it. Feel free to send me more. I would be honored to answer them. All right, y'all, take good care, and I will be in your earbuds again soon.